we've been extremely impressed so far. I know it's sort of early days of us working with Pursuit to build this out, but the results have been extremely impressive. We're now able to identify high target accounts for us that have sort of double the win rate from what our average is.
All right. Well, joining me today is my buddy Drew Leach, who runs business development, VP of business development at Granicus. Drew, thanks for being with us today. I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Happy to be chatting here.
So maybe for starters, I know most people know who Granicus is, but could you just, for anyone who doesn't, could you give us a brief history of the company, the types of customers you work with, and the solutions you offer?
Yeah, so Granicus, we partner with actually over 6,000 agencies and local governments in all levels of government, federal, state, local, in the US, UK, Australia, and abroad. And with the purpose of helping government better engage and better serve the public, and doing that through connected technology and services in order to provide a more unified customer experience that a lot of us are used to working with other sort of B2B type companies,
Right.
trying
Yeah.
to bring that to the public sector. Yeah, so
That's awesome.
yeah, you can think like driving awareness through engagement programs and communication programs, providing more seamless experience on a website, go to a city website, be able to access actual digital services, or just providing more transparency through city council meetings, allowing people to access that remotely and helping on the back end, streamlining a lot of those processes.
Amazing. So all the citizen interaction sort of stuff, whether that is through email or from the websites, transcripts, the meetings, things like that. So Granicus
Yep.
powers a lot of that stuff, which is awesome. Like I think to your point, it's more important than ever that local governments are able to interact with their constituents in a way that constituents are used to interacting with other companies too. So if I
Absolutely.
have my facts straight, Granicus is private equity backed. Couple
Yep.
of great PE firms own the company, and after, if I recall correctly, after they made those investments, there was a step change in how you all thought about account scoring. So, could you tell us a little bit about that? And also, I think really importantly, it'd be helpful to understand why, from your perspective, the board and the executive team thought account scoring was so critical to the business.
Yeah, of course. So obviously, selling the public sector, we definitely had the ability to identify what our TAM, our total addressable market is. But for our exec team, our board, it was very important to develop an account scoring model to within our addressable market, be able to identify the accounts that were actually much more likely to win with, accounts that have a higher propensity to buy. It was a really important initiative with our exec team because it's about efficiency, right? You want to spend time in the accounts, you want to spend money working with the accounts that are much more likely to buy versus spending time in accounts that, if you can be able to prove out through data is, less likely to buy. That's where we may be wasting time that we can spend more efficiently.
Yeah. No, I love that model. And I've seen it work in other verticals as well. And I think the key point is not treating every customer the same and like peanut buttering kind of a
Right.
moderate level of investment into everybody, but instead really being able to invest in understanding and building relationships, understanding the context of the people who are most likely to close. So it just allows your team to be way more dynamic and actually invested in the conversations that matter. Um,
Yep.
so I love that theory, that thesis. I mean, I think you guys have been doing this for a number of years now. I think I don't remember when did you guys first start doing that? Do you remember what
Yes,
year?
we built our first sort of account scoring model back in 2017 actually, and revised it a bit in 2019. But I'll say it did become stale over the years, and
Hmm.
there's just so many new capabilities, especially with AI and machine learning, that we weren't really tapping into. Our model kind of, it was a static model and it became stale over the years.
Yeah.
Kind of saw a lot less engagement with it from the sales and go-to-market teams. Starting to see that our what were high target accounts weren't actually um, the difference between sort of high target and low target was kind of starting to balance out and losing
Yeah.
that trend that we want to see. So we knew
Yeah.
that we needed to revisit this.
Well, for sure. I mean, when I think about how uh frankly, how much simpler it's gotten over the years to be able to do fancy sounding machine learning models, really the tools and the infrastructure to be able to pull them off quickly has gotten so much better. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
that
talking
I
about
think,
efficiency, I was doing an Excel spinning days on end on what you probably
yeah,
been able to do in 5 seconds. So yeah, absolutely.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also I think the data that's available today is just, better than ever. And so like, the difference between something like a regression and, an ensemble of boosted trees is like that's a big difference in terms of the sophistication of the model. And also the data that you can feed into it. And in your case, you guys had great data on lots of wins and also lots of closed loss deals that could teach the model and help it pattern recognize. At the end of the day, that I think is the cool part, right? Is we're able to take data from your CRM, combine it with data that's available on the websites of each of these individual entities, and combine it also with data that's available from federal agencies, throw it all into one thing and have it pattern match and spit back like, here are the places that your sales team should be investing more in. Um, which is probably a good opportunity to talk about some of the results that you're seeing from it. I know there's probably some stuff that you don't want to share, but from whatever you feel comfortable sharing, could you walk us through that? Like what have the results been to date as far as you've seen it?
Yeah, I mean, we've been extremely impressed so far. I know it's sort of early days of us working with Pursuit to build this out, but the results have been extremely impressive. We're now able to identify high target accounts for us that have sort of double the win rate from what our average is, and just able to really identify the accounts where we can win. But
Yeah,
just as importantly, though, we're able to find the accounts that are kind of the lower scoring that we shouldn't be spending time with. And it's like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, we're spending like 25-30% of our time in our pipeline accounts with sort of an abysmal win rate where
yeah.
we can now that we can see that, we can shift focus to where we should be spending our time and effort.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things that not just in talking with Granicus, but many other companies who sell into the public sector, you know, one thing that drives win rates is like, do you have accounts who are in proximity, to these ones that
Yeah.
you've won? And so I think over time, this is kind of gets into the cool part of it being dynamic, right? Since we are integrated with various different systems that Granicus has, as more deals are closed won, that'll update the model. As new data becomes available, whether it's from a federal agency or a public entity publishes a new budget or a new strategic plan or a new ACFR, or they have a new board meeting transcript, or they hire a CIO, right? Whereas before they didn't have a CIO.
Yep.
All those things can now be part of this model that all that's subtracted away from the sales team. The sales team doesn't need to know the individual mechanics of it. They just need to know this is an A.
Right. Make this very simple for the sellers,
Right.
right? Go after these accounts, avoid these accounts. But on the back end, I mean, this that's kind of the beauty of working with public sector too, is there is so much data available. Like
Right.
government is transparent about what's going on. There's census data, there's data in the strategic plans, there's budget information, like all that stuff is out there. And again, that our challenge was how do we find a way to actually gather all this information and model it in a way that makes sense. And so that's where Pursuit has come in and really helped us make strides over the last few months here. But sky's kind of now the limit with what we can continue to do and build into the model and use to strengthen it, grow
Yeah.
into new markets and continue to make our sales team efficient.
Yeah, totally. And I think like right now, I don't know the exact stats, but there's somewhere around 50 different variables that
Yeah.
matter, right? Uh,
No, we were using like five before, so it's like it
yeah.
is now exploded in terms of the potential.
Yeah. So it's cool to be able to track those, and I think we'll get even more fancy with it as time goes on.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a moment, Drew, about like how the sales team uses this stuff. But I'm curious at two levels. First is kind of like a manager or executive level, right? Because I know there's a bunch of stuff related to, how you think about territories or quotas or engagement models, strategy stuff. And then there's like the blocking and tackling, the stuff that on the other hand, sellers are doing every day and how they're using it. Can you share some thoughts on how each of those two groups within your company might use the system?
Yeah, from a strategy standpoint, you mentioned it, right? It's building out territories that make sense. Not just, we used population heavily before, but this is now really telling us how we can build out our territories. How do we incentivize the teams to go after, high target accounts? Just better understanding the market in general, what it looks like, where are
Mm.
we seeing strength versus weakness, and how can we approach that?
Yep.
Our go-to-market plans, our marketing strategy can now be based more heavily around, ABM, like how do we target these accounts better, instead of trying to engage with everyone with the same level of effort. And being able to also, we pump this data straight into Salesforce, so we can
Right.
actually look at our pipeline today and be able to get a health check on it. How are we doing? How do we make sure that we then drive the right behaviors with the sellers, with the BDRs, in order to target the right accounts, incentivize going after high target accounts, showing the data to them so that they believe it and they see it. Like that helps drive the adoption. Um, and even over the last few weeks, made strides in meeting with different folks across go-to-market and showing them
Yep.
what we've been able to build and just seeing the reaction of like, all right, let's go all in. Like, how do we adopt this and make this a part of our strategy
Yeah.
from senior level down to reps?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love all of that. And I think the points that you made about the incentives is critical. And also like the open doors that this now creates for account-based marketing, right?
Yep.
I think those are really cool points, and I hadn't thought of those. The other one that I think has come up on, and this is more of a point for sellers, is, and we saw this the other day for a different client. It was really cool where like if a BDR books a meeting and they get a question back from, or I guess it's even before they book a meeting. But if they send an outbound email, they get a response back from the person that is actually like to give a legit answer might take you 30 or 60 minutes, right? And at that stage of the cycle, the typical reaction is, am I really going to invest 30 or 60 additional minutes to come up with this like, precise answer to this person's one question as it relates to some weeded systems question, some systems
Right.
integration question that is totally bespoke to them. But if you're able to look at them and say, this is actually an A or a B account, like you might be now willing to
Worth
spend more
time.
time, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
And
that's
on
really cool.
the opposite end too, we get inbound leads obviously, and or there will be times that we do reach out or engage with low target accounts, but knowing that that's the case, we can make sure right from the get-go that we're asking the right qualifying questions to make sure
Totally.
it's a right fit for both ends, right? Like we don't want to
100%.
waste our potential customers' time either. If it's
Totally.
not a fit, let's know that early on and let's
100%.
dig in a little deeper early on so that we're not going, farther down the line, multiple meetings, and then
Yeah.
realizing, hey, this isn't a right fit. So
Yeah.
uh, it's efficiency on both ends.
I love that point. That's such a good one. And it made me think too, the opportunity down the road, if you're understanding that your best fit customers are these, but as a company, you're like, hey, we want to start making progress in this segment over here. What's different about them? What could we do to change the game? I think that might inform product stuff. It might
Right.
also
Yep.
inform customer success. So I guess in the last couple of minutes we have together, the two other questions I wanted to ask you. One is this first one is about surprises. Like, has there been anything that either to you, I mean, you've been looking at this data for years, or the execs or the sellers, like anything that jumped out in the recommendations of the model that people thought was counterintuitive?
I mean, honestly, the biggest surprise is how many different variables can kind of correlate together to show a strong propensity to buy.
Mm,
That honestly is been the biggest surprise. I'd say some of the other variables that have been interesting and things that we were, make sense, but now that we're actually able to do it, everyone's really excited, right? It's like taking latitude, longitude of an account and mapping that to accounts that we've won before. And we know public sector, that's really important.
Right,
Or accounts that we've lost before,
right.
distance to metropolitan areas, like things like that, that we were just not able to do before.
Yeah.
All the different housing data and things from census is very interesting. But I know one that has gotten people really excited is the ability to, I think you mentioned before, see, hey, this account has a digital transformation type title
Right.
or a
Yeah.
CIO, which they didn't before.
Right.
And we know that those types of personas are ones that we're able to engage with and understand the importance of sort of the digital transformation journey that we're helping our customers go on. So that being able to build that into the model is really exciting.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're saying. So basically, you talked about the version from like 2017 and then the update in 2019 that had, you said five, but I think maybe seven or 10 different variables in it. What you're saying now is the thing that jumps out at you is how much more predictive power comes when you're taking it from like 5 or 10 data points to like 50, basically. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of classic machine learning AI stuff, right? Throw
Right,
more
and
data.
before it was all about narrowing. We were thinking we want to narrow down the variables to the ones that make the most sense, but seeing actually the opposite, that's like, no, if we combine these 50 variables and use the
Yeah,
missing piece, right, was using machine learning to be able to actually model all that data together to tell us how this is, how we can use this to score accounts. That was the biggest piece that we were missing.
yeah, totally. I think it's a great point. Last question, then I'll let you get back to your day. It's the magic wand question. So if you think about, here we are, middle of August, where do you think, because of this stuff, like what do you hope is true in the next 12 months? And that might be like ways that your team has adopted the data, or, I'm just curious, is there what's your vision look like for the next 6 or 12 months?
Yeah, I think twofold. One is, and you're kind of just talking about it, the adoption piece. I think our last CapDB model, everyone kind of knew what it was, and oh yeah, I use CapDB, but when we actually dug in, that was not really the case. There wasn't really that
Yeah,
the adoption and people believing in the data to use it.
yep,
Where I want to see by the end of this year, like this is not just even go to market, like products using this, customer success, like
right,
everyone is using this to better understand our market and use that for strategic planning.
yeah,
And then ultimately the results, right? Like the main goal of this is let's improve the quality of our pipeline,
yep,
to improve our win rates, to improve our bookings at the end of the day,
yeah.
so that we can help more of the public sector better engage with the residents they serve.
Absolutely. That's what gets us super fired up is that very thing, right? Is like, and that's honestly, it's why we started this company
It
to
was it
pursue.
was our first conversation. I think that's when we knew it was a match right from the
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, it's been such a pleasure working with you and your team. You guys are phenomenal. You're ahead of the game and really appreciate your time today, Drew. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. It's been great working with Pursuit so far. We're looking forward to the future partnership.